Welcome to Sports Injury Podcast episode 13. My name is Josh Ryder. Today I'm going to talk to you about the big three shoulder mobility mistakes for throwers. The three mistakes are as follows. Number 1, being too aggressive with the shoulder mobility work. Number 2, not being aggressive enough with the shoulder mobility work. And number 3, not recognizing when to avoid shoulder mobility work altogether. Before we go any further, we should explain what's called GIRD in the throwing shoulder. GIRD is GIRD, and that stands for glenohumeral internal rotation deficit. What we see with GIRD is a gain of external rotation, which is this movement right here at the shoulder, and a loss of internal rotation, which is this movement right here of the shoulder where I'm going down. At this point, I want to mention a really good journal article, which we're going to be pulling some information from soon. Here is the journal reference from the IJSPT journal. Let's go over the three types of throwing shoulders that exist. Number 1 is the normal throwing shoulder, which is anatomic GERD. Number 2 is the hypomobile throwing shoulder, which is pathologic GERD. And number 3 is the hypermobile throwing shoulder. Let's go back now and specifically define those three classifications of throwing shoulders. We're going to pull some information out of that IJSPT journal article. We've already defined internal and external rotation of the shoulder. Let's also define one more term, which is total range of motion of the shoulder, which will be the internal rotation plus external rotation. Now I'm going to read off some definitions from the journal article. Anatomic GERD is going to be defined as any non-pathologic loss of internal rotation less than 18 to 20 degrees with corresponding symmetry and total range of motion within 5 degrees of the uninvolved side. Pathologic GERD is defined as any pathologic loss of internal rotation greater than 18 to 20 degrees with corresponding asymmetry and total rotation motion greater than 5 degrees of the uninvolved side. The last definition is for the hypermobile shoulder, which is defined as a total range of motion greater than 176 degrees or more than 5 degrees more than the contralateral shoulder. I'm going to suggest a mobility training algorithm based on the three classifications that we just went over. If we have normal mobility at the throwing shoulder, I would suggest shoulder mobility maintenance via active range of motion exercises for the shoulder. If the shoulder is hypomobile, I would suggest stretching the shoulder. And if the shoulder is hypermobile, we would want to avoid shoulder mobility work altogether. Keep in mind that all three shoulder mobility classifications would benefit from shoulder strengthening work. You can see that when it comes to shoulder mobility work for the throwing shoulder, the program needs to be customized. It can't be a cookie cutter program. So I would encourage physical therapists and athletic trainers to measure out your athlete specifically. Or if you're an athlete that has not been measured, you can go to an athletic trainer or a physical therapist and ask them to measure you in order to come up with your program. And you can tell them that you recently came across some information about GERD for the throwing shoulder.